you're all keeping well. Right, no match today, I'm afraid, so yeah, just thought I'd try something a little bit different on a video. Yeah, as you know, just recently I've been fishing Ferry Meadows. I do like my bream fishing, bream and skimmer fishing, and yeah, the videos I put out there actually just recently have just done really well. I said I wanted to try and grow the channel this year, and boy, you guys haven't let me down, so thanks ever so much. Yeah, it's been thousands of thousands. I think the last video I've put out there, it done about 9,000 views in a week, so I was really pleased with that. So thanks ever so much, guys, really do appreciate it. Keep it up. Like I say, I want to grow the channel. Yeah, and the subscribers have really grown. I think that last video ended up getting about another 250 odd new subscribers, so thanks ever so much, guys. So keep on subscribing. For those of you that haven't subscribed, dead easy to get onto YouTube and obviously subscribe. It really does help me if you guys subscribe, because obviously whenever I put a video out, it goes straight to you. You never miss it. Obviously the ones that don't subscribe have to kind of like go and search, and yeah, they're going to miss some of the content that I put out there. But yeah, for those of you that did subscribe, thanks, and for those of you that watch my videos, thanks ever so much. Anyway, I've come out today with my dad. There's Dad over there fishing. So it's yeah, it's just a little commercial, not far from both of us really. It's called Lawn Farms Fisheries. I've been here a few times, and I've never fished this lake we're on before. I fished, there's a small lake just over the way there that I fished, and then there's like quite a long lake that I fished, and yeah, fished the pole mainly on that. So but this lake here, never fished it before. Just come here for a bit of a fun day out with my dad, so which is really nice, and I'm privileged that I can still go out and do that. So yeah, anyway, we've caught a few fish, so which is good. It is, what's the time now? It's probably about 11 o'clock ish in the morning. So right, so what I'm going to do today, guys, is I'm going to talk feeders with you. The last few videos I've done, obviously I've been using different types of feeders, and I get a lot of comments, and I have done over the, you know, the time that I've been doing my videos, is why do I use this feeder, why do I use that feeder? So I'm just going to go over, I've pulled a selection of feeders out of my box, and I'm just going to go over the reasoning behind why I use the feeders. I'm not saying it's 100% correct and I'm not saying it's what other people do. It's just why I use those feeders and what I use them for, and what I believe they do, and they do for my fishing. So anyway, this is me fishing today over here. You probably could see it in the background there. So anyway, I'm going to have a walk over there, going to go and sit on my box, and yeah, just go over a few of the feeders with you that I use and what I use them for. Come back to you in a minute. Right then, folks. Oh, let's pull this round here. So I've just pulled a few feeders out. Obviously I've got loads of feeders, as most of us have, and over the past sort of 5-6 years, that's predominantly what I've been doing, feeder fishing. So most of my videos are based around that, if not all of them. But like I say, a few of you ask questions on my videos of why do I use that feeder, and you know, and a lot of you question that I should have been doing this and I should have been doing that as well. So yeah, and keep them comments coming. I really enjoy looking at them, and I can always learn. So yeah, please comment in the comment section below, always, if you think there's something I'm doing wrong, or there's something you're not sure about why I'm doing it. So yeah, by all means. I can't answer all of the questions that I get, but I try and be best. So but obviously I get a lot, so, and yeah, obviously I try and, you know, go through them as much as I can. But yeah, so please comment below if you've got any questions. Right, okay, so let's just say I'm going to be fishing somewhere like Ferry Meadows, which is predominantly bream and skimmer bream. So my thinking behind it is, and anywhere I'm going to be fishing for skimmers and bream, is I want to put a better bait out there before I start. Now, if it's a really shallow venue, I'd always be a little bit worried about, you know, bombing out a great big, this is what they call a bait up feeder. This is a Guru bait up feeder. So hopefully you guys can see that okay. They do different sizes. They've got a couple of different sizes. And I have got some other ones that are more like Coke cans as well, but this is used for baiting up, and a lot of the matches that I fish, obviously you can't throw ground bait out there, so you have to use a feeder. All the bait's got to be introduced by a feeder, so I use a Guru bait up feeder to do most of my feeding. And what I'll do with that is I'll add in some particles as well. So if I'm fishing for bream and skimmers, I may want to put some casters in there, some dead reds, corn, pellets, all sorts of things, chopped worm. But I'll decide on the day, really, obviously if the water's coloured or not, if there's a nice breeze, so it's nice and choppy, or if it's dead calm. That will all depend on how much feed I put out there. And I won't always use the Guru bait up feed. If it's a very shallow venue, then I may just go to a standard like Guru window feeder. Hope you guys can see that, so you can see the difference in size. And I may just, you know, put a small amount of bait out there. I don't necessarily want to go crashing straight over the top of them, but I'll do quick casts. In other words, what I mean by that is I'll only leave it out there for a couple of minutes, bring it in, and then go out there again, because obviously I want to get a better bait out there, and that's considerably smaller than a bait up feeder. So to start off with, my approach normally is to try and get a better bait out there, and that could be, like I say, it could just be ground bait, or it may well be a load of particle bait in with the ground bait. Could be a sloppy mix, could be a dry mix, it all depends on the day. But that's my first approach, getting the bait out there. And I would normally fish one or two, I'll do 1 or 2 lines, and yeah, maybe be more than that, but predominantly it's 2 lines that I normally fish. So, and I will feed them slightly differently, because they may want something different on one of the lines, and then I realise I can move on to that, and it may well be that you know, they prefer a different bait on the other line, so it all depends on the different depths. Anyway, so waffling on, first approach is a bait up feeder. Then it all depends on the weather. So if it's a really breezy, nice choppy day, but breezy, and the wind is really, you know, blowing, but you've got to be accurate. The idea with a feeder is to be accurate, and you might be casting, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70 meters, and with a ground bait feeder, that's difficult to be accurate. So one of the feeders I've been using is the Preston, I think they call it the Hex Mesh feeder, and it's got a nice little bullet weight at the bottom. But what I do like about this is it has got some big holes at the bottom of the feeder, as well as obviously putting it in the top, and then obviously you've got your normal holes around the outside. And the reason I like that is because it does hold the bait in there really well, and it flies superb, and it's very accurate because of that bullet weight on the end. But I do know once that's down there and I lift up, because of the holes in the bottom, that bait is all going to come out on the spot. It's not going to get dragged all through the swim. But if I'm fishing sort of like 50 meters plus, then I use these, even if it's not too windy. But obviously in the wind, they're really good. So, and there's different varieties. This is another style. This is more of a metal caged one, but like you can see, it's got a nice bullet weight on the bottom, and it flies through the air really accurately. And once again, it's got a big hole at the bottom as well as the top, so that bait comes out. Another variation of that, there you go, there's a nice little cage there. So it all depends on how much feed I want to be putting out there. It may well be it's nice and shallow, or, you know, I don't want to be putting a lot of bait out there, but this is another type caged feeder. Obviously it's got a big bullet weight on the bottom there. One of the reasons sometimes you want to use a big weight but only a little feeder is because you might be fishing a really deep swim and you want to get that down there really quickly. So one of the reasons I tend to use quite heavy feeders sometimes is because it is very deep and I want that bait to get down there quickly. I don't want it just travelling slowly through the columns and all the bait emptying out on the way down. And yeah, I want that bait to be hard on the deck where I want the fish to be, so where I can catch them, where they get. I want to feed in where my bait's going to be. So yeah, so that's just another type there, but it's got a big weight on it. So I'd normally use that as if I'm skimmer fishing. Don't want to be putting a huge amount of bait out there. Tend to be fishing fairly close, so maybe at like between 20 and 30 meters, possibly even closer than that. And but it's maybe quite a deep swim, so somewhere like Tamar Reservoir, where it's deep, you know, just literally on an underarm chuck. So that's the sort of feed that you could be using there. So that's my main sort of plan of attack. Now the reason I use the sort of open caged feeders to start off with is because I still want to introduce bait, and the bait won't be really wet at this point. It'll be fairly wet because I want it to be inert and I want it to get down, but it won't be really wet. and I'm still creating a nice bed out there. So I'll be doing something like anything between 3-minute and 6-minute casts according to the day, just because I want to keep that bait going in. So maybe for the first 40 minutes of a match, I'll be using one of these kind of, you know, sort of, I call them caged feeders, just purely because I want to be introducing particles, I want to be introducing ground bait. Now, once I start getting liners, and that could be early on, it might be within 20 minutes, and if I'm getting a lot of liners, then I may decide to change feeder. Once I'm starting to get liners, indications that I'm catching fish, I then know that those fish are sort of honing in on that ground bait. They're there, they're in the swim, excuse the pun, so then I decide, right, I really want to get them to, you know, rather than sort of like the fish might be in the columns of the water and they're following that bait down, I want them nailed on the deck. So then what I'll tend to do is I'll wet my mix up a little bit, and I'll fish maybe for another sort of 20 minutes with same sort of feeder but with a wetter mix, and I'll just see how the fish react to that. And if the bites are starting to come quicker, which is the reason I do that is because I want to get that wet ground bait right down where my feed is. Obviously that's the feed has hit the deck, and my hook bait's going to be down here somewhere close to it. So I want them bites to start coming quicker, because in a match obviously it's all to do with speed and catching as many fish as you can. If I notice they are starting to come a little bit quicker, or I'm getting a lot of liners, I'll then change over to what we call a window feeder. So there's a couple of different types of window feeders. This is one of the ones that Preston are doing, and I like these at the moment. So they're caged. I can't class them as a caged window feeder, so you still get a bit of ground bait coming out, obviously all the holes around the sides like a cage feeder, but you can just obviously plug some particle bait in there, maybe a load of chopped worm or whatever, and just cap it off with the ground bait. And I normally use a much denser mix for this, a mix that's a lot wetter. So I'm not feeding too much ground bait now. It tends to be more chopped worm, dead reds, so it's more the particle. But this, they just go like a bullet and they get straight down into your swim, and hardly anything comes out. Obviously with these cage ones, a bit does come out. So if you're starting early on, so if you're sort of like after about an hour you're going over to these, I tend to use the caged version. If it's a bit later in the match, maybe 2 hours in, and you're going to go over to a window, then I'll use one of these. This is one of the Guru versions. I'll use more this style, so you've got a few holes but not many, so the bait holds in there a lot more. You don't get any ground bait, or not much ground bait, leaking out as it's going down. And what that's doing is it's honing them fish right onto the deck, onto that little dustbin lid where you've been feeding it all. It's just getting straight down there, so there's not a lot coming through the columns, there's not a lot sort of like splaying out anywhere. It's literally just getting straight down there, and them fish just hone straight in for that, and hopefully your bait's sitting very close to it. So that's the reason behind why I use the different types of feeders that I use. There are different sort of cage feeders. Obviously you've got these Guru ones are obviously their weight heavy at the end, so they cast a lot better. If you're fishing rivers and things like that, then maybe you want to use, you know, a side weight, so that sits on the bottom like this. I think I've got another one here somewhere. Yeah, so there's a slightly bigger one there. And I still use these in Tamar as well. As you can see, the weight is all on the side here. Okay, so and they're all different shapes and sizes. And really what I do during the daytime, I will just chop and change feeders if it's really not going well. And it's amazing the difference it can make, because they might not want quite as much bait, or they might want a bit more, or they want it in a feeder that's releasing the bait slightly different to another type of feeder. So another weight forward one as well is these are the Matrix feeders, and I don't know if you can see here, but there's no way the bait can come out the bottom apart from these slots here. So these I don't use very often. I use these when it's really windy and I'm casting distance, so anything from sort of like any sort of 60 to 80 meters, and they're brilliant for getting distance. But the only issue with these is you need to make sure that all that bait's come out the feeder before you bring it in. So you've got to make sure that your ground bait is really fishing correctly to allow it to come out. So if you cast out and you bring that back in sort of like within sort of 30 seconds or a minute, you're going to bring in all that ground bait with you, and you're going to be dragging it all the way through your swim. So really, when you're fishing with these, you want to be fishing knowing that you're going to be sat on your hands for a bit waiting for a bite, so it's going to be out there 10-12 minutes maybe. But really good. They've got little bits of lead all the way lined through it, so they're, once again, it's like a bullet. It's a great feeder for fishing in the wind at distance, really good. So yeah, so that's it. That's the reasoning behind why I use the types of feeders that I use when I'm fishing for bream and skimmers, which is predominantly what I do. Obviously, if I was fishing somewhere like Albans Lakes, which you've seen a few videos I've done there recently, there's a lot of bream there, but you can catch carp there as well, because there's a lot of carp in there. I still really sort of fish the same. I'll start fishing, obviously I'll bait up with a bait up feeder, then I'll use a conventional feeder. If I feel that the fish still really want more and more bait, then I'll just stay on a standard caged feeder. But if I'm finding that I'm getting a lot of liners and the bites are not coming quick enough, that's when I switch over to a window feeder. And that's the reason is why I use a window feeder. Sometimes it's because it's maybe a very deep venue and I want to make sure that bait really gets down there, and a window feeder really works for that. Also, the flight of a window feeder is unbelievable. They really are bullet shaped. So it just could be that it's such a horrendously windy day, and to get to the distance that you want to get, the only way you can get there is by using a window feeder. And they do all different shapes and sizes of these. You can get much smaller ones than these, or you can get much larger ones than these as well. So, but the main reasons I use them is because I'm starting to get liners, I'm starting to get bites, but they're not coming quick enough. So I'll switch over to a window feeder to hopefully get those bites going a bit quicker. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed that. So like I say, if you don't agree with what I'm saying and what I'm doing, or you do, or you'd like any more information, please don't forget to comment in the comment section below. Anyway guys, I'm going to carry on doing a bit of fishing, and I shall see you in the swim soon. Adios.